Hello everyone, this is my presentation of my final project for figuration and movement. As an artist who also teaches and am always having art history in my vocabulary, I think about the past and the present and how our sense of time over great spans affects our daily life. And I've noticed that, it's a big part of my life, these daughters that I have. And so it's been a great source of artistic material as well. Recently, I've become really interested in composition and the power of shapes to just say something in a painting, even partially abstractly, and being really profound in that way. And so, as I've explored how to use those tools for meaning, it's natural that I would talk about this really important part of my life, my daughters. And one of the most fascinating things about having them is that they have their own world. They have their own relationships with each other, and it even shows up in how they relate physically in a space. As they've grown and changed, I can still see the previous versions of them in their temperament, and sometimes even in the way that their physical mannerisms and how they move their bodies, what their physical postures and gestures are. I'm interested in expanding this body of work to talk more about a greater span. Some of them are young women. I'd like to talk about that whole age range and maybe even talk about myself and how I remember being a younger person. The first painting in the series is called Mama's Bed, and this is two of my daughters asleep. And as I was working on this, I might have mentioned before, I really was changing the size of the infant. She kept getting as big as the 11-year-old, and I realized that meant something, that wasn't just a struggle with drawing figures. Here are a couple of earlier studies and some progress shots. Setting the table is another work of my daughters relating to each other. And in this one, I changed the poses of the figures from what I originally started with. I started using some photos that I'd staged where they were playing with this transparent or sheer curtain. And I also had some photos where they were folding a tablecloth, and I realized that folding the tablecloth was a much more naturalistic image. So that's what I chose ultimately. Here are some details. I went back in and used some linear perspective to create the brickwork. I like the effect partially, but I don't think I need it to take up so much space in the painting. So if I was going to rework this, I would probably put some objects in the foreground and maybe deepen the values in the background to create more a sense of space and not to have that linear pull of the bricks be so strong. I'd like to dampen that. This is the largest of the series. This is called The English Sun. It shows my daughters and my mother-in-law at a music festival enjoying what we thought would be warm weather, and we were all wearing sweaters while we were sunbathing. It was cool but sunny, and this is composed from different photographs where everyone is moving around. I even used video to look at my daughter's posture and movement. Here are some details. For some of the figures and objects in the middle ground, I used a paper towel that had that I'd wiped paintbrushes on. This is on Yupo, and I love the ease of getting transparent layers with the Yupo. That might be one of my favorites. Here are some more studies. I titled this painting The New One. This is one of my daughters looking at daughter number 3 in the bassinet and having a moment of contemplation, let's say. I almost called it The Rivals, but it turned out that they did not really have that kind of a relationship, so I didn't think that was fair. Here are some details. I worked this over a notan of a painting that had a conglomeration of art historical references in it, just as a place to start. It almost completely disappeared. The flying towel is taken from another study that I did. I'm not sure what it is, and this painting is not resolved. That area on the right side is still really unclear, and I do like the idea of introducing some surrealism, but I don't really want it to be confusing. So that's something that I'd like to work on in the future. This painting on panel is called The Bench. Work on in the future. This painting on panel is called The Bench, and I use several different photos to compose where my daughters are showing up more than once at different ages, but what they have in common is they were all seated on a bench. Here are some details. This painting is also not fully resolved. I'm not sure I really intend to finish it, but I would like to revisit this composition at a much larger scale. 18 by 24 started to feel small by the end of this. This one is titled Let Me Show You This. This one is titled Let Me Show You, and it shows 3 of my daughters kind of huddled over a puzzle or some artwork that they're looking at on a table near a window. I use that notan background layered with tissue in this one as well. And I started to complete the patterned rug and stopped because I felt like it would take away, like the detail of that would distract the eye from the figures. So I'm not sure if I need to fix that, but it's not something that I'm going to decide about right now. Here are some details from that one. This one's watercolor paper mounted on a panel. I like that rigidity. That's something that I'm definitely going to try, and I'm definitely going to try more in the future. I also like Yupo mounted on panel. Here I'm showing the progress from that notan borrowed from a Crosby painting where I layered tissue and more paint. Here's the study from that photo reference. This I titled Poolside. It shows my 2 daughters playing with toys or fiddling with something. They're together, but they're not together. Here are some details. This includes some tissue paper, some scraping, and this layering effect I discovered where I'm using an impasto of acrylic, leaving some gaps between brushstrokes, and then filling the gaps with a stain of a very intense high flow acrylic. I'm using tissue paper in this one as well. Some of the details show how it wrinkles or how I can smooth it out depending on what effect I want. I added that bottom part to a study that I had done before, and I really like that it gave me that extra breathing room. I'm thinking about finishing this by adding more paper on the right and left sides as well and making it probably something like 3 by 2.5 feet or something. I don't know. Here's some related study and an earlier, or the original version of the study that I worked with. Thank you for coming to my presentation. I just popped this in here. This was my sketchbook video. We've all seen it before, but I continued to do observational drawing practice throughout just to keep that fluidity of looking at the form and being able to translate it quickly. One of my favorite things about this intense 5-week quarter is that I was prolific. I'm not always that way. And I was able to let things go and not finish them, not really resolve them, which is sometimes good, maybe not so great when I have final paintings. So if I had had a deadline for a show, I'd be in big trouble right now. Although maybe if I had a deadline for a show, I wouldn't schedule work 10 hours a day. So part of it is timing. And I learned that I really have to try to finish things early, that I can't think of myself as working right up until the deadline. So I will make use of what I've learned. Another thing I would like to do with this body of work is expand that idea of what it means to be a girl, a woman, and how those things fit inside each other metaphysically and literally. So I have more ideas that I can work from, that I have photo references for. I have ideas for taking more photos to use as references. And I'd love to work larger. So I've got plenty of large paper and big rolls of Yupo, so I may continue in this vein in the future. I also appreciated seeing how my classmates were using their studio space and our professor, and now I have some ideas for how I might work larger that I hadn't thought of before. Thanks, everyone. See you in class.